Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're really excited to present ECF's first ever webinar tonight, and we're really happy that there are already so many people accompanying us today. I'm sure that there will be more people joining on later on, but nonetheless I would suggest to just start right away. So as announced today, we will discuss together with you the STEP application and assessment process. And also, we will talk a bit more in general about the question of how does a good grants application look like. Of course, in the beginning, I will start off by presenting myself to you. And for this purpose, I will switch on my camera so that you can see me and not only hear me speaking. So one moment, I just have to stop the screen sharing. So hello everyone, good evening. I'm Magdalena. I'm currently part of the ECF STEP team, and as you noticed, I will be the presenter of today. So I will talk you through the STEP application and assessment process. This will take around 20 minutes, and then there will be time to answer all of your questions. You can see already that I'm not sitting here alone. I'm sitting here with my colleague Sandra. Some of you already met her virtually in the chat. So she is here today to answer all of your questions. She will already take some time during my talk to answer your questions, but she will also prepare some more questions for me to answer throughout the presentation. Also, I would really like to encourage you to right away try out the chat function, because the two of us, we're speaking to you from the ECF offices here in Amsterdam, and we would be really interested in hearing from where you're listening to us today. So maybe you can just quickly type that into the chat and let us know from where you are listening today. And while you type in all your answers, I would already like to inform you that today's session will be recorded and it will be made available to you later on here on YouTube. So there's no need to worry about taking notes, but you can simply come back to the recording later on and watch the video again. And for now, I would like to go back to the presentation to allow you to follow me a bit more easily. So I will switch my camera off again and go back to the presentation now. That only takes a minute again. But here we should be. You should be seeing the presentation now. And I will just quickly have a look at your answers. That's really great. I can see that you're listening from many different places. So there's people from Hungary, from the Netherlands, also from Turkey, even from the United States and from Japan. I can see that there are people watching. So that's really great. And I think that already shows a bit what STEP is about. Because for us, STEP is really about connecting artists, culture workers, people across borders and of different countries. So as you know, STEP is an initiative of the European Cultural Foundation, and it is supported by the Companhia di São Paulo. And we as ECF, we really believe in the driving force of culture in society. So with all the work that we do, not only with our grants programs, but also with our advocacy work and our other programs, we try to support artists in their work that contributes for us, in our eyes, to building an open, democratic, and more inclusive Europe. Of course, we do not have the time today to speak about ECF's work in detail, but I really would like to invite you to go to our website and check out the work that we do. You can find all the links in the description box of this webinar and of course also in the info box of the later YouTube video. So just maybe take some time after today's webinar and go over there to see what else we're doing. But for now, I would like to stay with STEP. As you can see on this slide, STEP is an acronym for the name Supported Travel for Engaged Partnerships. And in this name, I think you can already see all the important elements of STEP. So we have the travel there. Well, of course, it is a travel grant. That means that with this program, we support artists in their travel. So artists who travel for their work get supported by STEP through the coverage of their travel costs. And then you also have another important element in this name, which is the partnership. For us, it is really crucial to support partnerships, to support collaborations between artists and different institutions and organizations. And today, as I said already, we will especially have a look at the application and assessment process for STEP. And to do so, I thought it would be good to put also ourselves, us as the ECF's team, us as Sandra and Magdalena, that we're sitting here and speaking to you, in the position of a STEP applicant. So I can imagine that many of you ask themselves what a STEP applicant does need to bring to be eligible for the STEP travel grant. And first of all, I can tell you that an ideal STEP applicant can be anyone. I think in general, STEP is really interested in supporting you. It's interested in supporting you, your ideas, and your projects. We really try to support artists and cultural workers from all different backgrounds and disciplines to make sure to also support the huge diversity and variety of things going on in the cultural and artistic sphere in Europe. At the same time, we of course do have some specific criteria and guidelines for our program. And I would really recommend you going also over to our website to check out the guidelines. Once again, you can find the link to them in the description box, because even if you follow this webinar today, I think that only a look into the guidelines will allow you to fully understand which criteria are important. But of course, I also prepared something for today. I thought we could just quickly go through a sort of an eligibility check to see which boxes you would need to tick to be eligible for a STEP travel grant. So let's have a look at this together. As you can see, this first point on this list would be the age limit. We ask STEP applicants to be at least 18 years old at the point of their travel. There is no upper age limit, but at the same time, we prioritize applicants in the beginning of their professional career who had not yet many chances to travel professionally. Then the second point on this list is, as you can see, the geographical scope. So in the moment, there is a number of countries that we support through the STEP travel grants. This is a list of 59 countries, which you can once more find in our guidelines. And those are countries in wider Europe. So it's European countries and some of its neighboring countries. And as long as as long as the countries that you wish to travel from or to are included in this list, they are eligible for support. The next point is probably one of the most important ones, and I guess also one of the most interesting points for you. It's the project idea. The good thing about STEP is that you decide what kind of project you want to implement, and we then help you with the financial side of this project. But you really come to us with your project idea. But that also means, we will talk about this a bit later when we talk more in detail about the application procedure, that at the point of the application, you already should have a clear idea of what you want to do, why you want to do it, how you want to do it, and when, and also with whom. And that leads us to the last point in this list, which is the partner organization. I already mentioned in the earlier slide that the collaborative aspect is really important for us. So you should have at least one committed partner organization that you want to work together with in the destination country. So this should be an independent organization that is either active in the cultural or social sector and also works normally in the cultural or artistic sphere, and that wants to embark on this project together with you. So those 4 points, let's say, are the preconditions for applying to STEP. And as long as you tick those boxes, you are more than welcome to apply for a STEP travel grant. And I can imagine that at this point, you still ask yourselves what kind of thematic priorities the STEP program has. Well, I can tell you that in general, we really try to support both artists which try to focus on the pure arts and on improving their own working methods and on finding inspiration for their work on the one hand, but also on those culture workers that are working in a very socially engaged and political way on the other side. So we really try to embrace all of that and bring it together. What in general is important and what I want to emphasize once more is for us to see how you engage in exchange, not only with your partner organization, but also with other maybe artists or other local communities in the countries that you travel. That means that in general, when we look at your application, we will always try to understand how your individual travel can have maybe a positive impact on the communities that you work with. So let's maybe keep that as a short introduction. And I'm quickly glancing to my colleague Sandra now to see if there's already any urgent question that we should answer. So she is nodding or not nodding. So I think there is no burning question for the moment, so we will leave that for later. I just once more remind you that, of course, you can use the chat function throughout the whole webinar to ask all the questions that you might have in regard to today's webinar, and we will then make sure to answer those questions. But if there are not any burning questions at the moment, I would suggest to just go further and to start having a look at the application procedure for STEP. We promised you to not only speak about STEP today, but to also speak a bit more about grant applications in general. And that's what I want to do now with you. Because what we did together with the STEP team is that we tried to gather our tips for how to write a good grants application. Of course, there is no universal answer to that question. And I guess no matter who you will ask, you will get a different answer, and maybe you also already have some ideas about that in mind. And if you see that there should be something missing on our list, then please also feel free to use the chat to let the others know and to share your knowledge and your ideas. But for now, I would like to first introduce you to our ideas. So as you can see, our first point on this list would be to respond to the call. Why is this important? Well, for us, it is really crucial that you always try to read and understand the guidelines that are provided by the grant-making organization to really understand what the grant call is actually looking for. So really take your time to go through all the provided documents, read them carefully, try to understand them, because only if you really understand them, you can also respond to them. The next point then might appear a bit basic because it is about sending in a complete application. But also this point is really important because what we also see in our work is that actually many people are also rejected for formal reasons. And in general, I can say that if someone is asking for a document, it is also for a reason. So only if you give us like all the information that we ask for, we can also really and fully understand your ideas and your project. So always before submitting your application, make sure that you included everything that was asked for. The next point then, once again, is really important in regard to the nature and the form of your project. You should always try to be really clear about your ideas, because reassure that you have great ideas in your head and that you have great projects planned. But of course, in order to get granted, you also should be able to get your ideas across and to explain to us why your project is so important and so interesting. And in order to do so, it's always really good to explain exactly what you want to do, how you want to do it, and why you want to do it. That means that it is always really important to explain your goals and objectives really clearly. And in order to do so, we believe that it is crucial to write the application yourself. We ask for this specifically in our guidelines, and we would suggest you to always do this, actually. When you write an application, write it yourself. It's always good to ask others for help and to ask others for support and maybe to ask others to double check what you wrote, or if you're not sure with something, don't feel intimidated, just go ahead and ask some friends, some colleagues what they think about it. But you should always write the application yourself, because only then you can really transport your ideas. And this is why I also included this last point in the list, which would be tell your story. So really make sure to tell us why your project is a project that is worth to be granted. So that's maybe just for now as some general points on how to write a good grants application. Once again, I think there could be more points added, and if you have any ideas about this, just let us know in the chat function. And I also will try to get back to those points when I talk now about the STEP application process. And in order to refer back to those points, I created those little reminders that you can see now on the screen. So here, for example, a reminder to read the guidelines and the FAQ. So I just chose this one as an example, but also because, as you will probably know by the end of the webinar, this is one of my favorite points, as I already explained in the beginning. Just make sure to check out the guidelines and the FAQ. To start having a look at the STEP application process, I think it might be good to have a view on this overview that I created. You can see that it basically leads you from the moment that you create an account in our online space and on our website, steptravelgrants.eu, to the moment that you submit your application. We will go through all those steps one by one, and I will explain more details about them in the following. But what I would already like to emphasize at this point is the deadline for STEP, because there is no fixed deadline. This is really great about STEP. It is open for applications all year round. The only thing that we do have is the so-called 50 days rule. What does this mean? So it means that you should make sure to submit your application at least 50 days before your departure. Why 50 days? Well, the 50 days basically give us as a STEP team enough time to, first of all, of course, receive your application, have a look at it, read it thoroughly, get in touch with you if we should have any questions, and to then also send out our answers. You will always receive an answer from us, no matter how our decision sounds, if it's like negative or positive, and we will always give reasons for our decision. But please make sure to stick to this 50 days, because only then we have enough time to really go through the application and to assess it. So the first reminder, here it comes, always have an eye on the deadline and also communicate. It can always be that there is a problem with the online space. It can also be that maybe you have some issues with some other documents or you have some insecurities. So always, if you have the feeling that this maybe could lead to a point where you could get in troubles with the deadline, just make sure to communicate this to the grant-making organization. So for example, if you're working on the STEP application, just make sure to come to us. You can always contact us and to let us know as an early stage so that we can see how we can help you and how we can find a solution together. Of course, you can also find our contact details in the description box, but I will also show that at the end of the webinar again. So let's get back to the STEP application process. I already mentioned in the overview slide that the first step that you would have to take when you want to apply for a STEP travel grant would be the creation of an account in our online space. So what you can see now on your screen is basically a screenshot from this website, from steptravelgrants.eu. Here you can also once more see our guidelines and our FAQ. But what you see, what is important for now, is also this yellow apply button, which is now somewhere in the middle of your screen. So if you wish to apply for STEP, you would simply hit this button and you would get to our application form, which you can see in this screenshot. I will not talk about all the details of this form today. As you can see on the left, you will be in general asked to give us some basic information about yourself and your project. You will then be asked to explain more details about the planned project and your partner organization, and to upload some attachments. We will discuss the attachments later, but as I already said, we will not go through all the different pages of this form, because as you can also see now here on the screen, you will be guided through the whole process, and the different steps that you have to take to fill in the form will be explained to you. Nonetheless, there are some points that I would remind you of already now. And the first of which would be that at the moment that you apply for STEP and that you submit an application to us, there will be an online project page created for you. And this project page will be publicly available. This is actually really great because it allows you to showcase your work to others and to also get in touch with other artists and to connect and to reach out to others. Of course, your personal details will not appear in this public project page. That will be information which is only accessible to us as a STEP team. And if you should wish for some reasons to not have a public profile, then please contact us before submitting your application, and then we can once more find a solution together. And also, if at some point after your application you wish to unpublish your profile, this will of course be possible. Just to already let you know this, because we sometimes receive questions in regard to that. The next thing that I would like to point out is that, of course, you can always save your application as a draft and then come back to it later to submit it, so that's no problem. Just make sure, of course, to submit your application on time and to respect the 50 days rule. What in general is really important when it comes to the application form is clearness and completeness. So in the application form, as I said, you will be asked to fill in more detailed questions about your project, and there you should really make sure to make your idea understood. So really explain very detailed what you want to do and why, and also what you want to achieve. So that's really important for us to see what you plan on doing. And a really good point to explain this is the activity plan. So really just let us know what you plan on doing, why and when and with whom. So this will be, again, another point that, of course, you will there also have enough space to explain the collaboration with your partner organization and the nature of this collaboration and what you plan on doing. So maybe this as an introduction to our application form. If you should have more questions on that, just let me know, and then we can also see if you want to discuss maybe some more details of it. For now, I would start talking a bit more in detail about the attachments that you are asked to hand in. But I see that Sandra also already prepared some of your questions for me. So I would maybe just have a short break here. I will switch my camera back on to just already answer some of the questions that you have. Thanks a lot already for your participation and for letting us know what you think about this. So I can maybe show you. I have just this sheet of paper which Sandra prepared for me. And the first question that we got from you was to where to find recently granted artists. Yes, thanks a lot for this question. First of all, we have a travel stories lab, as we call it. So when you go to our website, steptravelgrants.eu, you will find next to the FAQ and guidelines button, a button which is called Travel Stories. And it will lead you to this Travel Stories page where you can find all the reports of our grantees, and also you can find the project pages there that I talked about when I explained to you how to create a profile on our page. Another good point where you can look for grantees is Instagram. We have the hashtag #StepTravelGrants. I will also show it to you at the end of this webinar once more. And we regularly organize Instagram takeovers with our STEP grantees. So just go over to the ECF Instagram account, find us there and check out their posts, because it's really interesting to follow around projects. Then the next question is once more about the target countries and nationalities of STEP grantees. As I mentioned, we currently support travels from and to 59 countries in wider Europe. So that means that we support travels from and to countries in Europe and some neighboring countries, for example, in Northern Africa. And for the full list, I really recommend you going over to our guidelines document, since it would be a bit lengthy maybe now to read the full 59 countries. But what I can also say about nationality is that for us it is not important that you have a European passport. What for us is important that you travel from one of those countries that is mentioned in the guidelines. This means that you should be a resident of one of those countries in the moment. So you should have your permanent address there or should be working there in the moment, but you do not need to be a passport holder. So for example, in the past, we also had citizens from Northern America, we had citizens from Asia traveling, so that's no problem at all. The nationality really is not important to us. Then we have the success rate of incoming applications. In general, we really try to grant as many people as we can. And the success round in the last year, for example, was around 50%. But in general, I would always like to encourage you to apply because you only have a chance if you apply. And also, you can actually apply again for STEP if you should get rejected. In general, STEP is unfortunately a once-in-a-lifetime chance in the moment. That means that once you received a STEP travel grant, you cannot get granted another STEP travel grant. But if you should get rejected, you are of course more than welcome to apply again. And then we have another question, which is asking about, who can, a bit more about like who is eligible. Because the question is if only individuals can apply or also organizations. That's also a really good question. In general, STEP is a program which supports individual artists and individual cultural workers. That means that we, in the moment, unfortunately, do not support group applications. What we do support is partners traveling together. So if you're two people and you wish to implement a project together, you can apply, but then also in this case, you would have to submit two individually written applications. And also in regard to the NGO question, I can tell you that it is okay if you represent an organization, if you work for an organization that is somehow involved in the project. What for us is important is that this organization is active in the non-profit sector, and that also the project is in this case a non-profit project, and to make sure that still like the nature of STEP is respected. So I hope that this answered those first questions. Thanks again for answering those. It's really good that you were like this active in today's webinar because it also helps me to find out what you're interested in making this webinar interesting to you. So thanks a lot for that. For now, I would suggest to go back to the presentation and to go on with explaining the attachments that we asked for in the application form. And to do so, I will once more switch off my camera and go back to the presentation, which only needs 1 second so that I can turn on the screen sharing again. So here we are. Here's the presentation again. And in regard to the attachments, I can let you know that there are 3 attachments that we will ask you to provide us with, which is first of all an artistic CV, an invitation letter, and the budget template. So we will just go through them one after another. And the first of the 3 that I would like to speak about is the artistic CV. As you can see, the reason why we ask for the artistic CV is to learn a bit more about your personal biography, and your travel history. I think this is pretty clear when you ask about a CV. You just want to see a bit what did the person already do in the past. And this also really helps us to understand a bit more about your work and the work that you already did in the past. What is really important in regard to the CV is that it should be individually and personally written. This is especially important also when it comes to partner applications. Really make sure to also hand in individual CVs so that we can also see the work of both artists And then we can also understand how both artists work together and how they maybe complement each other, and to understand better which role which artist takes in the project. Then really important for us is that there is the professional travel history included in the CV. What does professional travel history mean? Well, that means that for us it is not important where you spent your last holidays, for example, but we do would like to see where you worked and lived in the past to better understand how much travel experience you already have. Since, as I said already in the beginning, with STEP, we really try to support those artists who not yet have had the chance to travel a lot professionally. And then generally, yes, we ask our grantees to not write a CV which is longer than 2 pages, just to make it a bit easier for us in the assessment. But in general, the form of the CV is really free, and you decide on how you want it to look like. And this is also why we call it an artistic CV, because it's really for you to choose the form that it should take. And the next attachment that I would like to introduce to you would be the invitation letter. The invitation letter is a really crucial element for us when it comes to understand how you work together with your project partner, your partner organization. So I already emphasized that for STEP, it is really important that you already established contact to at least one partner organization in your destination country. So that should be an organization, I just repeat it once more, who should be from the cultural or social sector and who is also active in the artistic sphere in some or another way. And this letter, the invitation letter, allows us to not only see that you're already in contact with this organization, but to also check a few more things. So first of all, the letter should be written in English. This is important for us in the moment, since our assessment team works in English. Then it should be personally addressed to you, to the traveler, and it should contain the logo and the signature of the partner organization. This is simply important for us if we want to find out more important information about the partner organization, for example, or if we want to contact it, it is important for us to have those details. Then also we ask once more to include the activity plan in the invitation letter, which then makes it a bit more clear to us that you already planned together with your partner organization what you want to do and maybe how or why you want to do this. And last but not least, also in this invitation letter, the collaboration should be acknowledged. Not only the collaboration with the partner organization, but also, of course, the collaboration with you as an artist. So that's the things which are important here. And then we already get to the third and last attachment, which is important to include in the application, which is the budget template. You will see in the online form that we provide you with an Excel sheet, a budget template. You find more detailed information on how to fill in this template in the form. But our experience also showed that this, in many cases, is the most difficult part for our grantees. This is why here I will take some more time to explain what we expect from you. In general, the budget template helps us as the assessment team to understand if your project is financially feasible. This is why, in general, we ask you to fill in the sum that you request from ECF, so that would be the grant sum. We ask you to give us some more information about your per diems and your accommodation costs and also your material costs. And also we ask you to give information on other funding. Why do we do this? Well, in general, I already said STEP is a travel grant. This means that STEP supports your travel costs. What STEP does not cover, unfortunately, is your per diems and your accommodation costs. And this is why we want to see how you plan on covering those. So in general, you should make sure to use this Excel template and to fill it in completely and correctly. And to help you in doing so, I prepared another slide, which is this one with a short example. So let's just imagine that we have an applicant who is traveling from Warsaw in Poland to Amman. You can see a short screenshot from the application form here. And you will be asked to indicate, of course, your departure city, your destination city. This has been done here. I just mentioned it. It's a travel from Warsaw to Amman. What we have then is an inbuilt distance calculator. So you do not need to search for that on the internet. You will simply get the calculated distance, which is the linear distance between both cities, which in this case would be 2,500 kilometers. And then another information that you need to calculate your grant sum would be your means of transport. You will also be asked to state that in the application form. So the means of transport always should be your main means of transport, which is in general the means of transport that you cross the border with or that you travel the longest distance with. So it's, for example, not important if you first go with bus or by bus to the airport and then you fly from one city to another. It's simply that if you decide to fly, then your main means of transport would be the airplane. And then you can simply go to our guidelines document and have a look at this table, which I also included in the presentation here. And you can see that actually the grant sum is calculated based on the distance and your chosen means of transport. So when we get back to our example now, we see that there is a travel distance from 2,500 kilometers, roughly, and that we're traveling by airplane. So we would actually get to a grant sum of 500 euros, as you can see, because it is a distance which is over this 1,500 kilometers and we're traveling by airplane. And this is then the sum that you would fill in as requested sum in our budget template. You can see that the sums for travels by train and bus are slightly higher than the sums for travels by airplane. And there's, of course, a reason for this. This is because we really would like to encourage you to use slow travel just because we consider it as more sustainable. And also we know that this is sometimes a more expensive way of traveling, which is why we grant higher sums for that. So just to let you know this, because sometimes this also causes confusion. So I hope that this made a bit more clear what we ask for in the attachments of the application form. And this is why now I would like to switch the focus a bit, or like redirect the focus. I already talked a bit about the assessment when I spoke about the eligibility criteria and what we look for when we look at your application. But I think what also would be nice to have a look at is actually the timeline. So what happens when, and also what happens after the point that you submit your application. So of course, when we receive your application, we will need some time to read it, to have a look at it, and to discuss it in our team. So in general, it will take 4 to 6 weeks after the submission of your application for us to take a decision. But you will definitely receive a decision after this 4 to 6 weeks. If you should get a positive response from us, then you will get your terms of reference, which is your legal agreement with us, as soon as possible. But you will definitely get it at least 2 weeks before you travel, so that you can also use this document if you should already need it. Then you have all the time that you need to prepare your travel and to implement your project. And once you return, you will be asked to hand in your travel documents and a travel report. You can already also use our online space, the travel stories that I just spoke about, to upload some updates from your travel. But the latest 1 month after you return, you should publish a final report there and hand in your final documents. And from that moment that you handed in your documents, it will again take 4 to 6 weeks until you receive your grant. So that means that in the moment, these travel grants are paid retroactively. So that means that you do not receive the money before, but only after you traveled and implemented your project. This is also a question which we normally receive. So just to already let you know this. Well, that's where I would leave it for now, because I think I already talked quite a lot today, and I want to make sure that now you have all the time to ask all your questions. I know that Sandra is already active in the chat answering some of your questions, and she also prepared some more questions for me to answer. So I think I will just switch my camera back on so that you can see me again, and together we will go to your questions and see what else there is to answer for us. Oh, sorry, here I am. So I will just take my paper again and see what you ask. So I see that first of all, there's, for example, a question about the areas that we grant. So someone asked if we also support design projects or projects which are created around architecture and creative placemaking. So in general, as I already mentioned before, we really try to support a huge variety of things and to really support all different kinds of cultural and artistic projects. So as long as we see that there is an artistic element and that you're working in an artistic way, for us, the project would be eligible for support. And once more, what I really want to emphasize here is that for us, really important is this collaborative element. So for us, it is important with no matter which kind of project that there is a certain degree of exchange with your partner organization or with the involved communities. So this can be an exchange, of course, about artistic processes, but it can also be an exchange about other societal topics. And you can once more find some more hints on that in the guidelines, but I hope that this already answered the question. Then the next question that we got is about the length of the travel. So there's a question if there is a travel limit in terms of the duration of the project. So in general, there is no upper or lower limit for the travel time. So in general, you decide how long your project needs and how long you need to travel. What of course you have to what you have to show is what you plan on doing with the time. So no matter if you're traveling for 1 week or for 1 month, you should be able to explain for more or less every day or every week what you're planning to do. So are you, for example, first going to do research and then you're going to work on your art? Or are you first going to interact with the community to talk to them and to find out their opinions and then implement that into your work? That's what's important for us to see. But in general, there is no limit in terms of duration. Then we have another question, which is about the project stage, maybe. So the question is if you can only submit new projects to us, so projects that you are newly developing, or if that can also be projects which are already ongoing. What is important for us is that this project is still developed. So you cannot apply with a project which is already fully completed, but it should be a project that you are either just about to start or a project that you're still actively working on. This is important for us. And what also is important, I'm not sure if I actually mentioned this before, is in regard to the partner organization, that it should always be a first-time collaboration. So if, for example, you have been working on a project with an organization already for longer, this unfortunately would not be eligible for support, since with STEP we really aim at supporting first-time collaborations with partner organizations to make sure that both organizations and artists can expand their networks. So that's maybe all about this question. And yes, then there is someone once more asking about application deadlines. So what I can remind you of here again, maybe also for those of you that joined this webinar later, there is this 50 days rule. So in general, STEP is open for applications all year round. But what you do respect is the 50 days rule, which is that you should submit your application at least 50 days prior to your departure date. And I really ask you to stick to this rule, because unfortunately we cannot allow for late application simply out of reasons, like fairness reasons, to make sure that everyone has the same chances. So I will see Sandra already prepared some more questions. Thanks a lot. Yes, also very interesting question. Someone asked if there can be more organizations that can be partner organizations than simply one. Of course, this is possible. We always say that you should have at least one partner organization that is secured at the point of your application, but you are more than welcome to work together with more organizations. We know that this is often the case, and this can also be really interesting collaborations. So if you have more partners that you wish to work with, this is completely possible. In this case, we would just kindly ask you to also hand in another invitation letter. So if, for example, in your application, you state that you have 2 or 3 partners that you work with in your destination country, we also would ask you to hand in then 2 or 3 invitation letters, depending on the amount of partner organizations that you work with. I will for now have a look at the chat to see if there are more questions where you in general still have time. So if you still do have questions, just let us know in the chat and I can now directly react to them and take some time to answer the questions. I will also ask Sandra, she will just show me. Yes, so Franziska is asking if participants of an international meeting organized by a small international NGO are eligible for a travel grant. Well, in general here, of course, this is a bit difficult for me right now to say because I can't say what this international meeting is about. But what I can say is that in the past we had artists, for example, gathering in a meeting to organize their ideas or to brainstorm on their latest project. So if it's, for example, this kind of a meeting, this in general would also be eligible for support. We also sometimes have applicants which apply for the participation in conferences. In this case, here we once more would like to emphasize that there also the collaborative aspect is really important for us. So if it's only the participation in a conference, we unfortunately do not support that with STEP. But if there's something on the side, another artistic project, another degree of exchange and cooperation and collaboration with the partner organization, then this could be a project which is eligible for support. But also, of course, I can encourage you if you have like really specific questions or very specific project and you are not sure if this is eligible for support or not, you can always write us an email and we will make sure to answer as quick as possible. You can find our email address in the description box and I will also show it to you in the end. And I will see if there's more questions. Yes, there's once more the question, how many people can visit an organization? This is also really important because indeed we have a rule about this or we have an information about this in our guidelines. We say that in general there should not be more than 4 grantees working together with the same partner organization per year. We do that to avoid structural funding and to make sure that many different artists in many different fields and also many different partner organizations are supported. And if you're not sure if someone who worked together with your partner organization already got granted a STEP travel grant this year, then just ask your partner organization. I'm sure they will know. Or also you could, of course, ask us and we can then let you know. So I'm just checking the chat. Okay, yes, that's another interesting question. Someone is asking how important the direct impact on the public is for a STEP application. Yes, I know that this is, of course, really hard to measure and really difficult to understand. And this is once more why we always say that it is really important for us to be very clear in your application. So as long as you have the feeling that your project does have an impact, it is probably eligible for support. So just really explain us how your project involves for example, local artists, or how it is connected to the work of your partner organization or to the work of local communities. And then this would actually cover this point. I hope that this makes it a bit more clear to you. Oh, yes. Another very good question by Tisa. Thank you very much. The question is asking about the grant sums. So the question is about what happens if my travel costs are below the sum that I got granted by ECF. I showed you the table of grant sums. So in general, STEP grants are sums between 250 and 700 euros. And in general, all of those grants are fixed lump sums. So that means that you will always get the full sum, no matter how expensive your travel costs were. So if, for example, you get granted a sum of 500 euros, and in the end, your tickets only cost, let's say, 400 euros, then you're free to use the remaining 100 euros and to take them for some other costs of your project and to invest them there. So it's lump sums, and you will always get the full sum. I will just check if there are more questions. There's the question if partners can also be universities. In this case, I unfortunately have to let you know that STEP allows not for collaboration with universities, since we do not support projects which primarily have an educational focus. So for us, as I said already, it's really important that it is organizations which are active in the cultural or social sector and which are involved in the artistic sphere and the work in the artistic sphere. And universities, for us, do not belong to that. But we can also, once more, recommend you here our guidelines, because you can also find this kind of information in the guidelines. So, for example, which kind of things are not eligible for support. That's maybe something which we did not discuss as broadly here today. Then I will check if there are more questions. But in the moment, it does not look like it for me. Just if you still have a question, then really quickly, just let us know in the chat right now. And if you should not have any questions right now, that's of course completely fine. You can find all information about STEP in our guidelines and on our FIQ document on our website. And as I mentioned, the links for that are provided in our description link.
Okay. If they are eligible.
Yes, Anton is asking if galleries are eligible as partner organizations. Yes, indeed. We have had many grantees already working together with art galleries. So if you have an interesting art gallery that you wish to cooperate with, then you're more than welcome to do that. So for now, I see that there are not any more incoming questions. So I would propose that I just show you some very last things to wrap up this session. So I will already switch my camera off and go back to the presentation. Thanks also a lot for Sandra, who really helped me a lot during this Q&A. And thank you also to all of you for being this active and for asking all your questions. We will now go back to the screen sharing. So here we are. You should now see the presentation again. And I would just once more, at the end of this webinar, recommend you checking out our travel stories on steptravelgrants.eu and to also find us on Instagram under the hashtag steptravelgrants, where you can find stories of all of our grantees and where you can see what other grantees did that maybe also helps you to understand a bit better which kind of projects we grant. And I think this is all for today. I once more would really like to thank you for joining today. It was a lot of fun for me. I hope it was informative for you. We really look forward to your applications. If you still should have questions, I just said it, then please send us an email, let us know. I hope that we answered all the questions that you had right now in the chat. We hope that we will be able to offer another webinar soon. We wish all of you that are following live a nice evening, and all of you that watched the recording of this webinar, a nice day. We hope to see you soon. Goodbye.